This is Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Ayin Aleph, and we're holding in the very bottom of Ayin Amid Beis, and we like all the learning, the incredible Kayach HaTayra on the Schusim of Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam and Torah Berabim. Shemir Hashem be an incredible Schos Rafua Shlima for Tinok ben Miriam Ahuva B'Seich Sha'ar Chayle Yisrael. We're holding 3 lines on the bottom of Ayin Amid Beis as we continue figuring out the exact and precise parameters of the Ben Sayer Umayra. Says the Gemara, 3 lines at the bottom, quoting the Mishnah. Achol kol meichav lo achol basar, shasa kol mashkev lo shasa yayin. The Mishnah said he does not become a Ben Sayer Umayra. Ben Sayer Umayra is specifically one who eats meat and drinks wine. Says the Gemara, what does that come to include? Devela keilas, press figs from keila, which could make one drunk. So maybe you would think it's the intoxication of the item. Says the Gemara, no, it's dafka yayin. Devash v'chalav, other types of drinks which as well could be intoxicating. But the chiddush is, they do not make one a Ben Sayer Umayra. Proves the Gemara, where do we see that this special figs from Keila, Chalav, Devash, have this intoxication element of them? Titania, we learned in our Braysa, Chadvela Keila, it's a Shas Devash Chalav, V'nechnas L'mikdash, and after doing these things, one enters the Beis HaMikdash, says the Gemara, as we turn over to Ayin Aleph, Amid Aleph, Chayav. Why are you chayav? Says the Top Rashi, Misham v'yayin v'sheicher al teish v'goymer. You're not allowed to be intoxicated when you walk into the Beis HaMikdash. So proves the Gemara without a shadow of a doubt that these items are indeed intoxicating. We continue on the top line of Ayin Aleph Amid Aleph, quoting the Mishnah, Einay nasa ben Sayer Umayra ad sheyachal basar v'yishte yayin. Says the Gemara, Tanarabana, Nachal Kol Meichav Lo Yachal Basar, Shasla Kol Mashkev Lo Shasa Yayin, Inon Asbet Sarmer, Ad, Shechal Basar V'yishta Yayim Shenemar, Zaylel V'soive, V'avi Shein Raya L'davar, Zeich L'davar, Shenemar, I'll tell you a proof, says the Gemara, Zeicher Alti V'soive Yayim is only Basar Lamai. Don't be among the wine guzzlers and the gluttonous eaters of meats. V'aymer, another pasuk says, Ki Seive V'zelel Yoreish, Yivaresh Ukraim Talbish Numa. And we conclude segment number 1 of today's Shir Amar of Zera. Kol Hayashin Bebeis HaMedrash Tayrasai Nasloi Karaim Karaim. Says Rav Zera, anyone who sleeps in a Beis Medrash, his Torah becomes tattered. He's not going to remember it well. Shenemar Ukraim Talbish Numa, which was the previous pasuk that we just quoted. And of course, this is not referring to one that dozes off. This is referring to one who's acting in a light-headed, jovial manner, sleeping in Beis Medrash, and therefore his Torah is not niskayim. And we continue with the next Mishnah, continuing delineating another aspect of Ben Sayer Umayra, which is whom this boy has to steal from and where he has to eat the meat and drink the wine. Says the Mishnah towards the end of the narrow lines, Vayin Aleph, Amin Aleph, Ganav, Mishal Aviv, Achal Rishas Aviv. If he stole from his father and he ate in his father's Rishas, or Mishal Acherim, he stole from others, V'achal Rishas Acherim, or Mishal Acherim, V'achal Rishas Aviv. In any of these aforementioned 3 permutations in the first wide line, in Anasa ben Sayer Umayra, Ad Sheyegna Mishal Aviv. The detail, the critical nikudah, it has to be that he stole from his father and he eats elsewhere. Here's Rav Yehuda Omer, Ad sheyignav mishal aviv u mishal ima. He has to steal from both, says Rav Yehuda. Explains the Gemara, we have 3 cases that the Mishnah said does not make a Ben Sayer Umayra. Explains the Gemara. Gana mishal aviv v'achal mishal aviv. Explains the Gemara. Even though his father's money is there, he's afraid that his father will see him. And because of his fear, we say that he's not going to continue doing this act, and therefore he doesn't fall into this unique category of Ben Sayer Umayra. Similarly, he's not afraid. He's not normal to be by other people and find their money. He has both nikudot. Number one, he's afraid of his father. Number two, he's not shchiach to be there. So when do we have a ben tzayir and mayr when these two details coincide? Says the Gemara, fulfilling the detail that what? It's shchiach, that the money will be there for him. And he'll eat in others' rishos, the shchiach lay, and therefore, and v'loi bias, he's not going to be afraid because he's not in his father's rishos. Says the Gemara, where's the reason for you to get this din and has to steal from his mother as well? Fundamentally, says the Gemara, what do you mean? If you steal from the mother, you steal from the father, because whatever a woman has, her husband owns. Explains the Gemara, what this means is a meal that was prepared. You're right. In Ilchas Kinyan, yes. Who owns this? The father. However, since it's a meal prepared for both, that's this critical detail of Rav Yehuda. Ask the Gemara 1 second. So says the Gemara 1 second. It sounds like you have to buy it. But if not, if he steals the meat and the wine themselves, then he's not. So Rav Yehuda, what's the case that he stole a prepared meal? Meaning the nikuda is, it sounds like basar bezul v'yoichal. Can't be that a meal is prepared and waiting. Means the money waiting for the suit of the parents. Someone else is marking someone gives this woman something al menas that the father, the husband doesn't have rishos. That will be the unique case in which the son could potentially steal and therefore make a ben tzayir mayr. Continues with the middle Mishnah and Ayin Alpha and Aleph Hayaviv Raitza V'ima Einoi Raitza. If the father wishes that he becomes a Mitzayir Mayr, not his mother, Avivina Raitza V'ima Raitza, or the reverse, Einoi Nasa Mitzayir Mayr. Achi Shteyam Raitza has to be that both the father and the mother have to together bring him to Bezdin. Rav Yehuda Aimer Amlaisa Imai Ru'uya. It says Rav Yehuda, the mother is not fit for the father, which we'll see what that means in the Gemara. Says Rashi, there's no ben tzayir mayr. Says the Gemara, what does it mean the mother's not fit for the father? If their marriage is forbidden, it's a marriage which is the case of chayvei krisos, any of the arayis, chayvei misas bezin, seifs of avuah. It's true, the union was forbidden, but Lamaisu, the Kedushin is taifs, and there is a marriage. It's a father and a mother, so why not? Ella says, this isn't the case. The mother has to be similar to the father. Now, what does it mean the mother is not similar to the father? It means she's physically different, and then there's no ben tzayir mayr. And this brings us to one of the critical and unique details of ben tzayir mayr, that the father and the mother, not only do they have to share the similar values, like we said, and bring the boy to Bezdin, they have to actually have similarity. He says, the Gemara Tanam Yacha, bring your raya. Rav Yehuda Aimer says, Rav Yehuda, Imlo Haisa. How? Their voice, appearance, and height have to all be the same. My time, what's the reason Damar Cross stayed in Tyra? No. Midikol Binan Shavin, Mara Vikamin Abinan Shavin, they have the same voice, also have the same appearance and height as well. Continues the Gemara, and that's going to be this detail that the father and mother have to be daimeh. Continues the Gemara, come on, also other Tanya. The following brisa, ben tzayir mayr lahaya, says the brisa never was a ben tzayir mayr, v'lo yasiliyah, it never will be a ben tzayir mayr. Ve'lama nichtav, so why did the Torah write it? D'raish v'kabel schar, a fascinating entity. Usually we learn Gemaras because there's the eventuality that there'll be halacha learned from them. Says the Gemara, what we're learning now, absolutely not, is purely lishma, purely to get schar, because it never happened, it never will happen. Keman ki Rav Yehuda, like Rav Yehuda, because there's no possibility that the father and mother are going to have the physical makeups exact the same. By Sim Rav Shimoni that what the Tanya Rav Shimoni Chimenesha Achel Zat Tatima Bas V'Shas Chatzi Lo Yayin Hoyitalki Avivimo Itzino Selasolka. I don't understand. The boy has a shtickle meat. The boy drinks a little wine, and the parents are bringing him for skila to get stoned. Ella rather says Rav Shimon Lahayav Layasaliyah, so will never will be. V'lam Nechtav Roish V'Kabel Schar. Amar Rav Yehuda Ani Reisiv. Rav Yehuda doesn't come to argue. Ani Reisiv Yashavti Al Kivra. I actually saw Ben Sarah Mur and I sat on his grave. Continues the Gemara, the Tani, the following Bryce. Irani Dachas, in a similar vein, says the Gemara, Lo Haisa never was Lo Haisa Li Hais. Lamanechtel swatted to have read about it. Irani Dachas, Reish Vekabel Schar. Keman. Says the Gemara, Rav Eliezer. Who's this Rav Eliezer? Tani Rav Eliezer. Omer. Kol Ir Sheish Afilu Mezuzah Achas. If there's one mezuzah in the town. I know not to see how low the utter depravity that this town had to fall into, that is not even a mezuzah. Says Gemara, therefore it's never going to happen. My Taimar Markov has called Shalala Tikbois Al Toich Rechavah Sarafta. You got to bring everything to the center of the town. You got to burn it. Beish. Even the Ika mezuzah have to be one mezuzah lo yavshar tachsev lo sasekin l'Hashem l'keichem. You can't burn a mezuzah. Therefore, there's no way to become an Ir Nidachas. Amar Rav Yunisa Nacham al Nir Isiv Yishavta Al Tila. I indeed saw such a city, and I sat on the mound of a Ben Sar of a Ir Nidachas. Says the Gemara Kvanaz Laha, third detail the Tanya. Beis Hamenuga Lahayav Laisaliya is the Beis Hamenuga house with Saras. Never was, never will be. V'lam Nechler Dorsh Kabel Schar Kaman. And Kravlos Rav Shimon. It's not. Those Rav Shimon Aimer Leilam Ein Abayi is Tamei Ad Sheyerug Shnei Kiris and Al Shtei Avanim. Says Rav Shimon, Allah Rav Shimon, the house is not tummy until you have two grisim on each of the two stones. B'shtei ksal b'karen echlas, so two walls in a corner. B'karen zavas, excuse me. Arkar, the length of the kishnei grisim, v'rachba is kigris. So very precise measurements. By times of Allah Rav Shimon ksev kir uksev kirois. Ezo kir shi kirois. What's a wall which is plural? Aviyamar is that karen zavis. So says the Gemara, this unique quality and qualification to be a Beis Hamenuga makes that can never actually happen. Tanya, and we conclude part 2 of today, well, part 3 really, the second Mishnah. Amar Rav Elazar Rav Sadaik. They would call it Sugas Charbasa Sagir, to the ruins of a Tzara's house. Amar Rav Shimon ish kfar Akoy Pamachas alachta leGalil v'risi makisha b'seyin, and I was going to Galil and I saw a place that they marked a sign that said V'amru avanim minukais pinu l'sham, stones from a Sarah's house were removed there, proving the Gemara again that there is a shita that says that it did indeed happen. We're at the bottom Mishnah of Ayin Aleph Amar Aleph, and continues the Gemara. More qualifications for Ben Taimar. If one of the parents was Gidim, missing a hand, Chiger Leim, Ilaim Mutsu, blind, Chayrish, deaf, then there's no Ben Sarah Meir Shenamar. V'tavsu by Avivim, they have to grab him, v'lo Gidim, and after missing hands. V'itziu, and they take him out of v'lo Chigrim, not after lame. V'amru, they say to him v'lo Ilman, after mute. V'nenu Zev, v'lo Yisuman, not after blind. Nenu Shemea v'kalenu v'lo Charsh, not after mute. Matirin by b'fnei Shleisha. Masrim by, excuse me, he says b'fnei Shleisha Malkin Isai. Parents give him Masra and they give him Malkos. Chazer v'kilkal nidin b'eser v'Shleisha. If the child continues, then we need 23 dayanim. The second level dayanim, Ve'edon Niskal Shiyasham, Shleisha Rishonim Shnever B'nenu Zeh, Zehu Shalaka B'vneichem. And the only way you can have a Ben Sarah Meirer is if we have 3 of the original 3 dayanim that are saying B'nenu Zeh, that the parents tell the original dayanim, Zeh Shalaka B'vneichem, this is the one who got Malkus. So the only way is if you connect all these dots. Says the Gemara, Shmas, you know we learn from here. Be'inan kra k'dersiv. We need a pasuk as follows. Shiny, excuse me, need a pasuk kra k'dersiv. The Gemara says the Mishnah is a raya that we learn up the pasuk. Pasuk kipshuta, explicit. And that's where we get all these unique qualifications, like our Mishnah says. Says the Gemara, no, shiny acha, no, that's not the reason. It's not because we're darshaning or we're learning the pasuk the most explicit way possible, but rather as we turn over to Ayin Aleph and Beis, says Gemara the Kuli Kra Yisiru, because they're all extra psukim. As the Tabrashi says, it could have said Vatisi or some al Shari here. How was called them? because of all the extra psukim, that's what you learn from. Not because in general psukim have to be taken at a very literal value, but rather because they are extra psukim. Says Gemara, betray Sagya, why do we need 3 people to give us straw? Why is 2 not enough? Amar Abaye, Hochi Kamar, Masu B'nei Shnayim. Hasra is indeed in front of 2, but Umalkin is up B'nei Shleisha. Malchus Sarah Myra Hechik Suva says, where is their Malchus? Because Ravua, Damar Ravua, Lamenu, Vayisru, Miban, Uban, Miban, Vayim Ben Hakas Arash, and therefore all the way back to original Makara Malchus, that there's going to be Malchus for Ben Sarah Myra. Chazvel Kilkanidim B'chav Gimel, the next step is that we bring him to a bezin of 23. Haimi Bayale says the Gemara, Zev Eloi Sumin Imkain. Nechta Benenu, my Benenu Zash, Maminatarti, we see 2 Nikudot. Number 1, they can't be Suma. Number 2, that you need to have the same Dayanim that were there, that gave him the Hasra and gave him the Skila. They were the ones that now are the only ones that could convict him and be Mechayiv him Skila. We're up to the Mishnah, about 10 lines down on Ayin Aleph, Amid Base. Says the Mishnah, Baruch HaShlim Dina, let's say the boy runs away before they convict him, and in the interim, he grows some of the pubic hairs down below, he grows enough of the hair that it surrounds the Aver Potter, then he's Potter. But the if once he was convicted, then he ran away, and then he grows the hairs, then he's still considered convicted, and he's going to be Chayiv. Omar Rav Chanina ben Noach Shabirich Hashem. If we have a ben Noach, that is Birich Hashem, which of course we know is Lashon Saginar, is euphemistic, that he curses and then Vachnit Gayer, and then he becomes a Ger. Potter. Says Gemara, the Lacha is he's Potter. Now let's remember, a ben Noach, a goy, is Chayiv Misa for being Mevarich Hashem. But because this person was Mevarich and then was Megayer, he's Potter. Why? From the fact that the whole trial changes the fact that now he's a Yid, therefore the form of Misa changes, and therefore he's not going to be punished for that which happened prior to his gears. Says Gemara, name of I'll bring you Raya Baruch Hashlonim Mardina Vachachig Tachton Potter. My time what's you Lami Shem Darmino Lahayel Vishanu Ishtanu is the reason of the Mishnah not that because he's Ishtana, because this boy now has the status of a gadol, because he grew these Cyrus Lamata, therefore he's no longer going to be Chayiv. Says Gemara, no, that's not the right. Says Gemara, a different Nekuda. The reason is that in the case of Ben Saramar, if he would have done it right now, he would not be Chayiv, and that's why he's not Chayiv. But in the case of the guy that was Mevarich Hashem, and then was Megayer, says the Gemara, if a Yid is Mevarich Hashem, he's also Chayiv Misa. So why should the Misa change? So Shema continues, the Gemara, he's Chayiv. Nigmar Dina Kamrit. Nigmar Dina Kavar Katilo. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. The Kasha was, we see Mishnik the Dina, and then he's Zakat and his Chayiv. So the Gemara wants to prove so too in our case. Says the Gemara, Nigmar Dina Kamri, you're bringing me a Raya. From Nigmar Dina Gavar Katila, oh, he's considered dirt, and therefore the fact that afterwards he becomes a gadol won't change anything, but it won't be a Raya Taz, because by us he's still considered a living man because it was no Nigmar Din. Tashema, 5 lines from the white lines, Ben Noach Shikes Chaveira, Yubal Ishas Chaveira. Or Ben Noach that it's his friend and kills him. Or he's Balish Chaveira, he commits, he's Mizan, Vinitzgar, then he's Megayer Potter. As I can be Yisrael, Vinitzgar, Chayiv. Says the Gemara, but if he does this with a Yid, if a guy kills a Yid, or he's Mizana with a Yid, and then he's Megayer, then he's yes Chayiv. So an interesting middle ground. So the Gemara, Vamai. Why do we say once he changed? Answers Gemara, Dina Misasa Bi'inan. No, in order to change, you need that both the din, the procedure changes, and the misa changes. Vahai, but in this scenario, Dina Ishtani Misasa Ishtani, and therefore he's still going to be Chayiv. So Gemara, wait, Bish Lamaroitzeach on the first white line. I understand the Reitzeach Meikara is what? Sayif, and now Vashta Sayif. Alisha is Meikara Sayif Vashta Chanik, it changed. Says the Gemara, Benaira Murasa, we're talking about a case of Benaira Murasa. Dai Skila is always Chiv Skila. I've also came be Yisrael, Dumya de Ishas Chavera Ketani. It said also came be Yisrael, similar to Ishas Chavera. Ella says the Gemara, Kala Bechamura, Meyashach Shaychi. Says Gemara, 1 second. Hanich l'Rabbanan dar Misayev Cham. But wait, or Rav Shimon dar Mechanek Chamar, Michael and Meimer, it's no longer a Kala and Chamura. Says the Gemara, Rav Shimon Sarvala Ketanas Veimenashya. Damar Komis Amrula B'nei Noyach, Ein Noyach Lachanek Ashita that we had prior, that the B'nei Noyach don't have the same split up in the level of which Misa is given, and therefore they're always going to be Chayiv Chanek, says Rav Menashe, Dvei Menashe. Beishlam Eishes Meikar Chanek Vash Chanek, says Gemara. El Reitzeach Meikar Chanek Vash Tasayif. Kal B'Chamur Meir Sheikh. Says Gemara, and there we can say Kal B'Chamura, and we conclude, let me say, I'll bring you a raya. Says the Braisa, Sar Chavachach Bagra, if a name Rasa is Mizaneh, and then becomes a Boigeres, Tidoin Bechanek, Beskila, my time alone. Why does it not get skila? Lami Sham the Alve Shani Shani, Vakoshki Nakad Shani Ligamri. Hamar Le, Rav Yechon Latana says Gemara, no raya. Tini, Tidoin Beskila, she's punished with skila, which is what she should have gotten, even though she's now a Boigeres, she'll still retain the punishment of when she was a Naira. Therefore, there's no raya for this price. It's Rav Chanina. We'll pick it up from the Mishnah of Siyata Dishmaya.